Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're walking through my research on some truly fascinating human transformative forces, specifically the phenomenon known as Kundalini. We're diving deep into a massive synthesis of ancient wisdom, modern neuroscience, and cross-cultural evidence. It's a very detailed topic, and I'm going to make sure we cover all the important parts to give you a complete picture of what just might be the most suppressed and, frankly, misunderstood force in human existence. Let's get right into it.
To kick off this dive into the research, I want you to just stop and consider a pretty radical proposition. What if there is a latent intelligence within your own body, just waiting to be activated? And look, we aren't talking about some metaphor or poetic concepts here. We are exploring the very real possibility that a profound biological upgrade, a completely dormant energetic system, is physically resting right now at the base of your spine. We have 13 chapters of detailed material from the source document to get through. So to keep things flowing, we've structured our journey into 5 main themes: defining the Serpent Fire, suppression and universal evidence, anatomy and awakening triggers, navigating the awakening experience, and finally, integration and practical guidance. So let's jump right into Section 1, defining the Serpent Fire. We're going to strip away the myths and look at the core definition and anatomy of this ancient force. According to texts that span well over 3,000 years, Kundalini is a latent, primal, biological, and spiritual energy. The word itself actually comes from Sanskrit roots meaning coiled and sleeping, which is exactly where that famous serpent imagery comes from. But here is the absolutely crucial point. In tantric philosophy, Kundalini is not a belief system. It is a biological event. It's described as being as real and physical as electricity running through a wire. Basically, it's the individualized expression of primordial creative intelligence resting completely dormant in the Muladhara chakra, just waiting to wake up. Now, to really grasp this, it's so important to understand the difference between ordinary life energy, which yogis call prana, and Kundalini itself. You see, prana is the vital life force flowing through hundreds of thousands of pathways in your body called nadis. It regulates your breathing, your digestion, your circulation, all that good stuff. Kundalini, on the other hand, it's a highly concentrated, latent fire. When it wakes up, it doesn't just wander around. It moves through one very specific highway. That's the central channel, or Sushumna Nadi, running straight up your spinal column. As this Kundalini energy awakens and starts ascending this central channel, it passes through 7 major energy centers, or chakras, starting from the root all the way up to the crown. And as it hits each center, moving from the basic survival instincts of the root up to the heart's domain of love and into the throat's truth, it completely alters human consciousness. Along the way, it actually pierces 3 psychological knots, known as granthis, which represent our absolute deepest layers of bondage and ego. We're talking about a total systemic overhaul of the mind and body. That brings us right to a massive question in Section 2, suppression and universal evidence. We're going to look at the Great Suppression and the universality of this phenomenon. Because if this energy is a universal biological reality, we really have to ask, why is it almost entirely absent from modern Western education and medicine? Well, my research highlights that this silence isn't an accident. It is entirely structural. First off, institutional religions just couldn't control it. Kundalini is a direct personal encounter with the divine. Literally, no priest required. Second, Western medicine historically had absolutely no framework for it, so they just pathologized it. When people experience spontaneous body movements, the medical establishment often misdiagnosed it as psychosis. Thankfully, researchers like Stanislav and Christina Grof came along and coined the term spiritual emergency to advocate for non-pathologizing support. And thirdly, traditional lineages kept it secret on purpose. They knew that triggering this energy without the right preparation could be genuinely dangerous. But despite this profound, centuries-long suppression, the exact same physiological awakening has been rigorously documented across completely disconnected civilizations. It's fascinating. We see it in Saint Teresa of Avila's interior castle and Christian mysticism. We see it in the Sufi activation of the Lataf centers through rhythmic prayer, in the Aboriginal Australian dreaming initiations, and even in the Kalahari Bushmen. They describe num, which is this boiling energy rising from the belly to produce an ecstatic healing state. It's like this is a universal human language hidden in our biology. Moving right along to Section 3, anatomy and awakening triggers. Here we're focusing on what actually sparks this biological fire to move from its dormant state. As the research clearly shows, Kundalini really doesn't care about your readiness, and it certainly doesn't care about your schedule.
It can be triggered deliberately, sure, through decades of sustained spiritual practice, or maybe through Shaktipat, which is a direct transmission from a teacher. But it can also happen completely spontaneously. Near-death experiences are a massive trigger, often leaving survivors with wildly heightened sensitivities. Things like intense breathwork, plant medicines, profound grief, extreme stress, or even intense devotional love can accidentally unlock these completely dormant energetic circuits. And what's really exciting is that modern science is finally beginning to catch up here. Clinical researchers like Dr. Lee Sanella propose that Kundalini is actually a profound self-repair mechanism of the central nervous system. He called it a phylogenetic cleaning process. Basically, it utilizes the parasympathetic nervous system, largely via the vagus nerve, to clear out accumulated stress, developmental blockages, and deeply stored trauma. It is essentially the nervous system reorganizing itself at a much, much higher level of biological coherence. It's an upgrade. Which perfectly leads us into Section 4, Navigating the Awakening Experience, focusing on the symptoms and the dark night. Because when this phylogenetic cleaning process actually begins, the subjective experience is far from just sitting in a quiet meditation. It can be incredibly beautiful, sure, but also completely overwhelming. The symptom profile is massive. We see a spectrum ranging from intense heat, often described as literal liquid fire moving up the spine, to spontaneous, involuntary physical movements called kriyas. People experience inner light, they hear inner sounds like a rushing wind or ringing bells, and they undergo this rapid delayering of old traumas. Emotionally, it can swing wildly from waves of inexplicable bliss and universal love straight into periods of absolute terror and existential dread as the ego structure begins to dissolve. But here is a really crucial caveat from the source material. The most dangerous aspect of this process in the modern West isn't the energy itself. It's undergoing this massive neurological shift in a society that lacks any cultural framework to explain it to you. Imagine experiencing these intense, reality-altering symptoms while being told by everyone around you that you are simply losing your mind. That creates so much unnecessary suffering. The absence of context is the real danger here. And a crucial, often widely misunderstood phase of this integration is the dark night of the soul. As the texts explain, this is not clinical depression. Instead, it is the phase where the ego's false identity, all its beliefs, and its entire worldview completely crumble. It feels like total abandonment. But the mystical traditions actually view it as the final, necessary surrender of the personal self before you can achieve true unity. It's basically the great death of who you thought you were. Which brings us to our final chapter, Section 5, Integration and Practical Guidance, where we cover safety, integration, and enlightenment. Because look, awakening is really just the beginning. What truly matters is how we integrate this hyperactive nervous system into everyday life safely. Living in a Kundalini active body requires some strict safety protocols. Since this energy is naturally upward moving, grounding is just non-negotiable. We're talking walking barefoot, spending time in nature, eating root vegetables. You've got to eliminate stimulants and adopt a clean, simplified diet. Finding a sangha or a community is also vital, so you don't have to navigate this alone. And finally, traditional texts heavily emphasize channeling this immense excess energy into creative expression and selfless service. It grounds the energy by directing it outward in pure compassion. If safely navigated, this profound biological journey culminates in enlightenment at the crown chakra. And as the source material beautifully clarifies, enlightenment is not a mood. It's not a personality type. It is the permanent recognition that you are the pure awareness behind all experience. You are not the body, you are not the mind. You are the undivided space in which all of existence appears. The biggest takeaway for anyone working with this force, whether you're doing it intentionally or it happens spontaneously, is patience. The greatest danger is trying to force the process. You have to surrender your timeline completely, because this ancient, self-organizing biological intelligence is far older and vastly wiser than your personal plans. Honestly, your only job is to prepare the vessel. Ultimately, all of this research leaves us with one incredibly profound question about how we treat our own bodies and the hidden universe waiting patiently within them. Are you prepared to do the grounded, practical work to build the vessel for the boundless potential sleeping inside you? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep grounding, and always respect the incredible technology of the human body.